Welcome everybody to our June SeaPUG meeting. Happy summer. We got another busy summer full of events coming up. So we'll do a brief intro and then I'll hand it off for our speaker, Zoe, to talk about our exciting Copilot topic. So I won't drain this because I'm sure if y'all have been on the call before, you've heard it a million times, but we like to start off with a group intro for anybody that's new and then some announcements before we hand off to our speaker. So a couple reminders, if you are not eating lunch and you're willing, we would love to see your smiling faces on camera. And then also, we love active participation, raising hands or asking questions in the chat throughout this call. Feel free to do that, and just remember to be friendly and respectful to one another. For anyone new here who hasn't heard from us before, we are SeaPUG. We are a collection of Power BI enthusiasts in Seattle, so we focus on the west side because there is also an east side Power BI user group. And then we mainly focus on Power BI topics as well as Power BI as it relates to some other tools such as Fabric and Copilot, which you'll hear about shortly. And then if anyone has an itch to get involved or you have a speaker you'd like to suggest to us, or you'd like to volunteer to be a speaker yourself, we love having that community involvement. So I'll drop a link to our anonymous survey too if you're feeling shy or you don't remember who to reach out to. Or you could reach out to myself, Wesley, Andrew, Gaston, or Russ on the call as well, and we'll take that feedback or recommendations as you have them. And then we have a couple meetings scheduled for like what's going to look like a busy summer, but we're still working on dates. But right now we know our next meeting is going to be in July, and we're going to be covering monitoring options in Fabric. So mark your calendars for that. We should be sending out a meetup for that in the coming weeks. And I will pass it off to Wesley to introduce our speaker today.
Great, thanks, Alina. All right, our speaker today comes to us as the current senior product manager at Microsoft for Power BI, so she's very much in the right place. Prior to her time at Microsoft, she spent multiple years in the coding trenches as a BI developer at Design Laboratory and Blueprint Technologies, just to name a few. Eventually creating her own consulting company centered around Power BI and appropriately named Data Zoe Power BI. She's a Maven Analytics Challenge winner and a Hall of Famer, which I think anytime you can be a Hall of Famer anywhere is just really cool. And something that I will have questions about, she's also a former construction news reporter. Yeah, I might bring that up later. SeaPUG community, please welcome Zoe Douglas.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction, Wesley. Yes, so I'm very excited to be here. So yeah, so obviously my naming convention, my name is Data Zoe Power BI, anyway, they don't let me name things, so you're in luck at Microsoft, and then, yeah, so the construction news reporter, yeah, so that was with McGraw-Hill Construction. I think it's now Dodge Analytics, which looks much cooler on my resume. But yeah, so I would call up, I was actually in charge of getting information about public projects in the Seattle area and reporting them in our tool. And then, so stuff like the Link Light Rail and the 520 bridge expansions. That was when I first came to Seattle and I was looking for a job and I ended up in that space, and that was very exciting. So, but after that, then, even then when I was working there, I was still doing some data projects. I just didn't really realize I was doing kind of data projects. I would do stuff with Access and output data and do reports and stuff. And then I didn't quite realize I was doing data analytics already. And then I got into data analytics space. So yes, so that's that. But yeah, so I used to do consulting. I lived in Seattle area for a while, and then I moved to Alaska for a while, and then I was in Oklahoma. And then I just recently moved back to the Seattle area when I joined Microsoft. So
welcome back.
But yeah, so I'm super excited. So obviously my name is Zoe, and then in the room with me, actually, I have one of our engineers.
You
have video. Oh, you're on the video on the call?
Yes.
Oh, nice. Yeah, so Tasia, she's one of our Copilot engineers.
Yes.
And then I also have my nephew in the room. Luke, you want to say hi? So he's visiting, and so he's going to learn about Power BI today, whether he likes it or not. So,
Sweet.
It's great.
But yeah,
I will
so
pass over share screen if you have
yeah.
something you'd like to share.
Sure. So I was trying to figure, I wanted to actually mostly just focus on just demoing, see how it goes. You know, it's always fun and risky, and I like it. And then, so I'm going to open up desktop. I'm going to focus on desktop for right now, and then we can kind of get in, if we have time, maybe we'll get into some of the web stuff as well. But I want to focus kind of on desktop, because I think we just had a lot of kind of Copilot stuff going in there. I'm going to put it on this screen if I can. Oh no, it signed me up. 1 second. Oh, there it goes. Okay. So let me go ahead and share my screen. This one. Okay. So you shouldn't see anything just yet. I'll move this up here. All right. So now you can see Power BI desktop, I think.
Yep. Got it.
Awesome. Okay. And then I also have kind of the slide deck from FabCon we did a Copilot kind of overview for Power BI. So I can share that kind of at the end too, kind of go some of the stuff. But I figured let's just try it out. Right. So I'm just going to start with the sample data here in desktop and kind of see what trouble we can get into. All right. So I don't know if anybody's used the sample data before. It's just 700 rows. It's very basic. It's nothing really exciting. But at least you can kind of get in and get started, and it'll kind of show off some of the things we can do in just a smaller scale. All right, so first we have this Copilot button here, but we're going to leave that guy alone for a sec, because first I want to run over to DAX Query View, which is one of the features that I've been working on. So I always show DAX Query View. So you always get DAX Query View when you have me as a speaker. And usually it does we just loaded, because we loaded this empty, and then we added the data, so we don't have the usual kind of, it's like evaluate and then picks a table in your model, you can run a query. But we have quick queries here, and we can do kind of top 100 rows, right? So you can quickly get into kind of a DAX query and see your data. So if you've been doing, you know, so obviously most people are familiar with measures and calculated columns, your DAX formulas, and the measures is just kind of outputs a table, and then DAX queries. That's kind of how, like in the report, like all the visuals, they run a DAX query to get data to put in the visual. Like, this is great, Zoe, but you promised Copilot. So here, let's go see what Copilot can do. So this is a brand new one. We don't have any measures. So one of the things we can do is we can open up Copilot, and, you know, Copilot has these buttons. We can suggest the measures. We can explain a DAX topic or write a DAX query. And that's kind of highlighting some of the things that it can do. So let's just suggest some measures for this model. And what this button does is it kind of pre-populates the text here that we're going to send to Copilot and have it generate that query. So here it's using the DAX query syntax, right? So we have evaluate, which is kind of similar to like select in SQL, is you have to always include that to get data back out in the query. And then you have the define with the measure. So this define syntax, I can actually define a measure in the query context. So I can run this, and I've seen that these are, you know, we have some sum, some average, you know, and we have kind of the profit margin, which is dividing some information here, right? And then I can, so before, when we first released it, you couldn't run it when it was still have the Copilot open, but now you can run it before I went ahead and kept it, so I can test it before I say, okay, yeah, looks good enough, I'm gonna keep it and then run it. Now we can run it right here. We can also conversationally build this. So I would say this is giving me kind of just a one row, but I want to see this by year, right? So show this by year, and I can have Copilot kind of help me adjust this query it already created for me to kind of see that in a different way. Hopefully it works. Come on, Copilot. Right, so now it's gone ahead and it's changed it from a row to summarize columns. It's going to add in that group by columns, even order it by that group. So now I can run this again, and I can see by year what those values are. Right, so these look good. I'm going to keep it. And now I can see these measures here. Now you'll notice, I don't know if my zoom in will work. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit. Aha. So you'll see between rows 3 and 4, 5 and 6, there's a that gap, and that's your code lens. So the DAX query itself does not modify the model in any way, but because you're in the model, you're authoring it, we know you have permission in desktop, right? We give you these kind of quick ways to add this measure. Instead of copying and pasting it over into model view, put in the DAX window, we added these kind of actions that you can do right here, and you can add them to the model. And we just added, and a lot of people asked this, there's a button up there now, we'll do all of them at once, right? So that's not out just yet. So it's a quick preview for you guys. That is coming, I promised. I've been promising it for months, right? So I have proof. We actually did it. It's going to come out soon, right? So I can click this button now, and I can add these to the model. So if I come over here, I can see those measures added. If I go to the Model Explorer, I can see those measures added in here now, right? So now we have, so Copilot's helped us with this. Copilot also can help us maybe explain this query, right? So maybe you open this file, your lovely coworker left this beautiful DAX query here, or maybe you left it yesterday and now you forgot what you were actually doing. So sometimes happens. And then now you can come in here and Copilot can actually explain what is happening. Or maybe you got some code from the internet. You're like, okay, cool, it's giving me what I want, but what is it actually doing? So now we have kind of Copilot in line, right? So you don't have to wander off. You can stay right here and it'll give you some explanation. You can also ask it about DAX topics, right? So, so explain, order by, right? So you can just ask it about this. If you see, okay, summarize columns, right? You can kind of hover and it says, create a summary table. If you hover on these things, they give you some information, but you can have Copilot really get into it, explain what's happening, give you examples, right? So Copilot's really good at kind of doing this kind of in line. So let's try to help you, as you're here. All right, so I'm gonna close that.
Right,
Let's
Zoe,
see. So yeah, go
can you
ahead,
jump in
ask
on
questions.
Or is that discouraging?
Yeah, go ahead, please ask questions.
So does this mean that as Copilot is answering questions, it's looking at the context of the model?
Exactly. It has context of the metadata in your model, not the data in the tables or columns, but it does look at we do give it the kind of metadata. So your columns, your tables, and all that kind of information, the data type, as much as we can do that. Yeah.
And that seems like it's a real advantage towards, instead of using Copilot that you would access through Explorer, because you don't have to explain nearly so much. Is that right?
Exactly.
Okay.
Like I think there was, I think Mark did an example where he had to send, like, you have to send like the, modeled up or the metadata to the prompt, then ask and all that kind of stuff. But here, it's going to give you always that latest information to Copilot with every prompt. And then also what you've already have typed in this editor, and you can run it.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, so this is
Zoe, there was one other question in the chat from Andres.
Yes.
Which license do you need to have these features?
Excellent question. So you need a paid Fabric capacity, right? You can't just be in the trial. So that one you have to have the capacity. I have once. This is running off of obviously in the Microsoft tenant, but I do have over here. Let me see. I have on my personal tenant, I have a capacity, right? And so it's in the Azure portal, right? So here I have my Fabric, I just named it Fabric Copilot. And I have it paused right now, right? So sometimes I'll do demos where I am using my own personal production tenant, right? And so I try that out. So if I want to use my Copilot, I just resume this, go ahead and change my workspace to use this capacity. And then I can use, and in desktop, it'll prompt me to pick that workspace. It has a Fabric capacity for Copilot to utilize, right? And so that's kind of how you do it. And then what I do when I'm not using it is I pause it. Obviously, I can't use Copilot Fabric features while it's paused, but it doesn't charge me. And then I can spin it down and spin it out that way. So that's what I usually do. But that's how you would utilize these features. Now, if you have premium for Power BI, you can also use Copilot. but you can't use it on, obviously, in Fabric workloads. You only use it for Power BI. Premium per user is not enough to get you Power BI Copilot either. It's just unfortunate. I know. I'm like, yeah, and they're like, no. So yeah, so it needs the GPUs that come from the Fabric capacity, or premium for just Power BI. All right, so then that's the DAX Query View Copilot. Let's see what else. So then now I've created these measures. Now I want to add in my descriptions, and I have another Copilot here in the model view. Now this is also available in the web. So if you're editing a model in the web that have Model Explorer, then you can go here and it'll also be able to do this in the web, same kind of view. Right, so you'll tell you that this is going to be visible, right? So these are when you hover over them, when you're building a report in desktop or in the web, it will go ahead and show you this information. So we want to be clear that this is something that, and you can edit it after saving. You can actually copy and paste from here. You can have it try again, right? So we have, this is a quick way to do this. We can go through and add them all in and then just validate that they look okay. And of course, once it's added, you can just click in here and edit. If you make changes to a measure, right? So now you're going in, you're like, Zoe, that's great. You did this on the first time. It doesn't automatically update if you make a change to your measure, but you can just come back here and click that button again to regenerate it, right? So now here, if I come in here at total profit, and I'm going to go ahead and just multiply it by 2, right? Change that DAX formula. It updated really quickly. It did. Okay, and then I just click this again. And it's going to go ahead and generate that description. So here, and then multiply the result by 2. Right, so I'm going to hit discard because I'm going to actually not multiply it by 2. And the other place that you can see this is, like if I hover over this measure here in the DAX formula bar, it doesn't show me anything. Exactly. This is the one I was pushing for as soon as we got Copilot. I'm like, I need it for this thing, okay? Because I'm not going to sit there and write on my measure script, even though I know I'm supposed to, and I know it's good, and it's all happy. I don't want to do it. Right, and then you're modifying things and everything. Yeah, it's documentation. It's not fun. And then, but now what else you can do is here, if you come into DAX Query View, when you peek here, it will actually show you that description. And it'll show you that DAX expression. I'll show you some more DAX query if you guys are interested. Now for the total profit right here, so if I have this and I can say multiply by 10, right? Now this is just modified here in the DAX query. If I come down here and hover, it'll actually tell me this. It's going to show me which DAX formula it's using in the query. And it's going to say in the model one, which we're not using, it's inactive, actually has this. So you can kind of see if you've been modifying these and you want to say, well, what the heck, how is it different? You can see it in this peek window. All right, so we have this Copilot for measure descriptions. I think I did them all. I think I did. Yes. Right, so now we can come back to the report view now. I don't think there's one in the data pane, data view. No, there's not. Right, now I have my Copilot here, but there's also, so we have this guy, which will do the Copilot pane. In desktop, we can say, so I can chat, answer data questions, create report pages, right? So you can, let's see if it works today. So summarize this model, right? So I can ask for kind of a quick summary of what's going on here. And yep, so we get kind of this nice little paragraph. Includes data units sold, analyze profit of different products across various markets and countries, right? So it gives kind of a very business answer. It's not saying I have 700 rows and 12 columns. It's going to try and tell you kind of in context of the model summary, right? The data in this model, not just about the model, right? And then we can have it suggest some content for the report, right? So this is the report creation Copilot. Now we have this here in desktop. I think we had it first in the web, like when you're editing, creating reports in the web, you could use this, right? So it's going to give some tiles here, right? So here we have, it's going to suggest some sales analysis or product performance, discount impact, price analysis, right? And I'm just going to click the first one. Now I could also type in what I want, right? I don't have to use these buttons. It just makes it kind of easy. You can just type in, say, hey, create me a report that does this, create me a report that does that. And I can go ahead and create this report. Now, of course, this report isn't going to be like, it does a really good job. It's a Copilot, right? I always nitpick at it a bit. I'm like, I don't want the access labels. I don't want this. Why is it showing this? Why is it truncating that? Right? But honestly, this is a huge time saver, right? It's going to put, well, hopefully, and it's going to put the, visuals on there in a nice layout. It's going to make it look good. And then I can go ahead and adjust it to what I want. And that alone is huge, right? Sitting there fiddling around, trying to line things up, get it nice, all that kind of stuff can be kind of painful. Right, so here I'm going to just minimize some of these so I can see it's a bit bigger. Right, so we can see that it's got some, it's got the Copilot kind of look. If you've seen the Copilot report, you can see it's gotten in there. A lot of times what I do is like, okay, so sum of sales, this is great. I like this one, the rest I don't. And now I can come in and adjust anything I want, right? So I can come in and I can say, I don't want the sum of sales. I want the average price, total units sold. I can change them out, replace them, do different ones. It has an implicit measure. I think this one's using my actual measure, right? So maybe I want to bring in my profit margin. And I can go ahead and do that here and maybe remove this guy, right? So you can kind of get in and adjust anything you want and make it kind of, then kind of continue from here. Right, so that's that one. And I can say, which segments perform well. Let's see, I haven't actually tried this one yet, so we'll see how it goes. And then, of course, we have some visuals with Copilots, and we have synonyms and stuff like that. So I'll show those as well. One of the things I like about, so this one, yep, so here now it's going to go ahead and answer that question here in the ping. Right, so based off the available data, it's looking at the different segments in the model. It's going to give me a little table. And it's going to get that from the report page, right? We can say that, the government segment is doing well, right? So we can see that in the numbers, and we can also see kind of where that's getting information from. Another way you can do that is, I'm going to remove this guy. And we have a couple of visuals that we have the summary. Where is my summary one? Right, so the narrative visual has kind of a way to do this with Copilot. I am going to just remove a couple more of these to make this a little bigger. Okay, so bring this in. Right, so now we can say, you can do custom like the one we had before. You can get to it this way if you don't have Copilot. If you have Copilot, it's going to say summarize this data, and it's going to do this here. Now, what's cool about this one is you can summarize, you can change the prompt, right? So maybe you want to focus on a particular area or focus on something particular. You can give it that kind of prompt. The other thing you can do is you can limit it to kind of what visuals you want it to consider in the summary. So maybe you have visual that you just don't want it to talk about, right? It's there. We know it's there. We don't need to summarize that one. You can get into it that way. And of course, you can do that. Now, what's also neat about this is dynamic, right? So this one, you come back tomorrow, you refresh, it'll update. When you publish it and your consumers are looking at it, it will update. Also not based off just when the data is refreshed, but also by their filters, right? It also has these cool little citations. So it makes these statements, and you can click on this, and it's going to highlight the visual that it got that information from. It's basing that statement on this visual, so you can go ahead and see exactly where it's getting that from, right? Like, and you can do different ones. And then the other thing is, what is the other thing I was going to say? Let's go, cross filtering, right? So if I filter this data, so let's look at government here, you'll see it's now got the little spinny, and now it's updated to that cross filtering here. Yes, and yes, F64, I just saw the chat there. Yes, F64 is the minimum bar here. right? So that's that one. Now we also have, let's see, select, right? So now it's going to update again and adjust itself. The other one we have in here is a little bit more hidden, but if you use like the data Q&A visual, synonyms are really critical to your model, right? So if you do data Q&A, also wanting to try and utilize this like with a DAX Query Copilot or even the data Q&A, right? So that people can type in different words for the same field, but you have to have taken the time to actually set this up. So if I do add synonyms, it's going to it's going to take a while because it's going to look at all the tables and the columns in your model, and it's going to kind of find all those synonyms, not only for Copilot, but there's kind of org ones and other ones, and I'll show you those in a minute. But it does use Copilot to kind of help out here. So these ones, are probably going to be like the data Q&A here is not the same as the data Q&A here, right? So this one is the existing kind of data Q&A that we had previously, where we're adding Copilot to kind of help you ease the burden of adding all those synonyms, right? Which is also another time-consuming task, similar to kind of the measure description one, right? We all know we're supposed to do it, but we have to sit there for a while and type it in, and it's not the most exciting job in the whole world. So, oh, units, yes. Oh, I see. Here you mean the format? Yeah, so the Copilot, so when I added some DAX queries, so DAX queries do not get to set the format string, just sad. I'm asking, don't worry. And then, but you can just do that here, right? So while this is loading its synonyms, I can still go ahead and do other things. Let's see, where am I? Well, now I try to do something else that's ready. But anyway, I can actually click on the profit margin with my data here. Find just the way you would any time else, right? So I find that profit margin and I can change this to a percentage, right? So now I have that in the proper units. Now you can do all kinds of cool things with formats, right? You can do custom, and you can do my dynamic format strings and have them display dynamically if you've wanted to do your own set, for K, for M, anything like that. I have it's a whole topic on that as well. But let's go review the synonyms that it came up with. Right, so now you put in this screen, you have options here, right? So we have the Copilot had the synonyms, we have the org synonyms, and we have a source, right? And now you'll see over here, they have different icons. Let's go find a Copilot one. Maybe somewhere looking for sparkles. Where's my Copilots? Okay, obviously the org ones are like taken over. Let me see. Right, so these are the ones, and what you do is you can add in, so financials, the table, maybe we can change to, finance data. Okay, cool. And you can add them all in. You can also add in your own, the table of data, right? I mean, you can add whatever you want here. You can add these in. Now the Copilot one, so this is sales, right? This is coming from the org. I don't know what that is. Right, revenue is probably a good one. We have the ones we have in already. I want to find the Copilot one. I'm not seeing the Copilot ones. Oh. Anyway, usually they have the green with the sparkles. Maybe it's just not showing on this one, but I just did it a minute ago and it worked, of course. Anyway, so despite the fact that...
Is it the add synonyms button there, Zoe?
Oh, maybe I have to do this again. Oh, okay. I have to redo that one. All right, let's try that. I thought it already did it, but yeah, right. So there's a button there. If it doesn't show up, we click this button. It's magical. And it's going to load for a minute as it goes through these ones. And there's also kind of a bunch of different things here, kind of if you're doing the data Q&A, kind of the visual, this is like even separate from kind of Copilot, right? They have a lot of options here. You can do this kind of relationships, which is this kind of phrasing. So if you say best colleges or best blah, you can actually kind of define that here. That's about my entire knowledge of it. So, but they have some pretty cool things there. I've seen a demo, and you can kind of teach, you can review questions, right? Suggest questions. So like if people just type in, you can actually have, you can pre-seed it and stuff like that. And this is not just a Copilot thing, right? This is just a feature of Power BI you can do with or without Copilot. All right, so it's going to take a minute. I think I can close this and come back, but I'm not 100% sure. Let's see. Okay, wait. Oh, there we go. I can scroll. Yay. Okay, so now I'll come back here. A table of figures. I think these are the Copilot ones. It's just not showing the icon for fun demos because it did add a lot more. So I'm not quite sure what that is. You can also, exclude things from Q&A, right? So if you have like an ID column or something like that, you can just remove it here and it won't even come into play when people are typing in those questions. So there's a lot of different options here. All right, so I'm gonna close this guy. But the key part is you have to actually click that plus button to add it here before it's actually added into the synonyms, right? And you can also get to these synonyms in the model view. If I go to my table here, you'll see the synonyms are also available here. All right, so this is those ones. I'm gonna, let's see, let me do, right, and then this is how they have these kind of, you can actually try these, you can add suggestions and that stuff. That's just the data Q&A feature. Now, I'm gonna move this guy for a second. I'm gonna bring in this guy. All right, fine, stay there. And then, yeah, so that's the kind of, I think that's all the ones we have here, right? You can create new content. Let me see if we can do, where, what is happening with profit margin? I don't know if we'll show me something. I think I took that one out actually. So let's do sales, right? So you can kind of just ask these kind of more, these questions for data Q&A are actually going to kind of Copilot data Q&A, not the other one. And then we are looking at bringing in more information, like the synonyms, and that's called the kind of linguistic schema behind the scenes of the model. It's not actually part of like the semantic model itself. It's an additional kind of model available, and kind of bringing that into Copilot as well. And this one also has that kind of way where it annotates, and you can click on it and see where the information is coming from. And I do believe it goes cross pages. So any questions? Oh, how complicated can the graphs and charts, because we get 3D graphs and other measure on top of the measures? I'm not quite sure I understand the question there. But so for right now, we are kind of focusing on kind of core visuals that you'll have to go change it afterwards. They're constantly adding in additional features that you can do. Visuals that we can kind of work with. Trying to get to at least be kind of sensible, right? And not give it like, go pick any visual here. But of course you can change to any visual you like once it's generated. And you can adjust them just like you would before. Yeah, it doesn't do layouts yet. That's actually one of the feedback I've seen, like, relay out this page. It's something they absolutely want to do, but it's a prioritization kind of work here, right? But like all that kind of stuff is fair game, right? We want to help with that kind of stuff. Right now, it's just kind of doing the Gen one. The Q&A one of the things I have seen demoed too that they do here is that, and they're working on it for kind of preview, is you'll be able to kind of have it generate a visual, right, in the pane, and then you can add a visual to the report. So you can kind of build a report visual by visual instead of having it do the whole report like that. That one's really cool. I don't seem to have the build that does that. Otherwise, I would show that because I think that one is really cool. But yeah, so all those kind of things are coming up.
Sorry, Zoe, did you mention there that we'll be able to do individual visuals soon?
Yeah, so when the data Q&A, it'll output a video, you can add the visual to the page, right? So that's something that I have seen that is coming up. I'm not quite sure when that one's going to come out. I'm not the thing. So yeah, I'm also not the PM for it. So, you just take that what I say with a grain of salt. But yeah, that one is the one that I think I was most excited about when I saw, you can kind of add it just one at a time and kind of build a report. I think we did that at FabCon, right? So I want to share. Let's see if I can present this. Right, so this is the deck that we presented at FabCon. I lost how I can move my slides. Hold on, sorry. Right, so this is kind of, so I did this with a few of the other PMs at FabCon. We had kind of, unlock the potential, productivity, upskills, right? I think the one of the things we focused on, especially with DAX Query View, is being able to kind of get help with DAX in the context of writing DAX, right? So that was one of our huge drivers to help people kind of where they are. And all about these, but now on this there's one more slide in here that kind of gets into the different features, right? So we have, for reports, describing it and kind of getting that visualization. I swear we had, right? So these are the ones I kind of went over, right? So we have the DAX Query View, right? It's in desktop. We are putting it in web here soon, right? So that's coming. DAX Query View also, we're doing for Live Connect reports here soon as well. And then, so measure descriptions, that's available both in web and desktop. The report creation is in both, right? So now we have it in both. This was back in February. And then narratives and summarizing, right? So that one's a huge one. It's really good at that. And then we also have the synonyms, right? So we have the pane, and then those synonyms are just in desktop. Right, and then we had, let me see if I can get away from the demos, because we had a whole bunch of demos in the slide deck. I'm gonna actually get out of the presenting. Ooh. Set desktop a second. There we go. Let's see if I can get to one of the other ones we had in here. There it is. So this is the one we showed. I'm just gonna put it up here, where this just talks about, right? So sneak peek we did of kind of answering the data questions. We have that out now. And then we have the add the visuals to the report page, right? So it'll generate a visual and you can add it in. So this is kind of a card and a little bar chart. And then you have this option to kind of add visual to the report, right? So that's coming up soon too. I knew we presented it somewhere.
Awesome.
And then finally, we have a bunch of like kind of consumer experiences as well, right, from the web, right? We have the one where you have the visual, the narrative, obviously on the report, and you have Copilot in a report, and then Copilot in the new app experience eventually as well. And those are called sneak peeks. All right. Any other questions?
That's great. I do have one other question, Zoe.
Yeah.
One thing I've noticed is it's pretty consistent with the type of filters it pulls in when you create a page. If you've got a country field or a segment field, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Is there kind of a heuristic by which it seems to tend to pick those two? Like it never seems to want to create a date filter, for example.
Yeah, so I think this one, because it doesn't have like a date table, I've had ones
Gotcha.
where I've had like a date table or a have year and stuff like that. It'll bring those in. It also depends on kind of what you're asking it, right? And so I know that there is there is a method to its madness. I don't know it, but it definitely has, it tends to pick stuff like based off kind of what you're looking for in the report, right? So this one was doing, the data analysis across different segments and countries. So it was specified in the prompt it wanted the segment and countries, and so it brought them in at the top here, right? So if we look at maybe one of the other ones here, performance of different, right? So we'll have this create another page, and performance of different products in terms of units, cost, and profit. It'll probably come up with hopefully with a different one, but yeah, so it's going to kind of, depending on what you put in the prompt, is really going to obviously influence what it's going to put up there. But yeah, I've definitely seen it put like date and year up there when I've had a date table, or when I've asked it for like analysis over time or something like that. All right, so this one, no, again, it did the country and product. Never mind. Making me
I think we had
liar.
segment on the last one, so it's it's good now.
Okay, create a page to can't type page to show year-over-year analysis, right? Stuff like that. So you can get, detailed. You have a lot of text in there. If you wanted to kind of write more in there, you can. These are very basic prompts. This one actually turned out pretty good. I like it. It's got kind of, I can read all the labels. I like it. stuff like that. But yes, you get in there, you can play with it. Obviously, this is a very small kind of model, right? And I've done it with kind of more complicated ones too. But this one's just easy one to kind of follow along, and you can try it out too. Yeah, so huge data and complex models, that's a great question, right? So there is a token limit with Copilot, right? So we can't, so once you get to like large metadata, like say you have like 200 tables and one of them has like 100 columns, right? That's just got a lot of characters. Ah, look, it did a year. Country and year. I got to put a different one up here. We have some kind of tricks up our sleeves where we're kind of trying to reduce how much we're going to send with it to kind of pinpoint what exactly you're looking for. But it will start obviously reducing some of the information it's going to be sending, right? So that's when you're kind of see some of those performance down. For DAX query view, I don't think we do have specific limits actually as well. I'm into, it's like if you have more than like 5,000 measures in your model, like we will say, sorry, Copilot is maybe a little bit understaffed for your model to kind of analyze and stuff like that, right? But they're pretty high, right? We wanted to make sure that they were something that just kind of weed out if you just have this kind of ridiculously large one, just to make sure that, because at that point we know the reduction of the scheme is probably going to hurt the output. At that point, you're not going to get as much useful out of it because we can't send that much data with Copilot, right? But those limits are pretty high. And then we're also adjusting them. We see kind of if we get feedback, like, and I have a feedback button in the DAX preview, we get feedback, you say, hey, this isn't working for me, blah, blah, blah. We love to hear it, right? Especially on these models. I don't think Power BI, if you have embedded, yeah, I don't think we have. I'm not sure. I'll have to double check, but I'm pretty sure Copilot isn't going to work on the embedded scenarios. You can do it to create the model for embedding, of course, but for like the summary and stuff like that. Do you know? Yeah, no. You don't know either? Okay, yeah. I'm pretty sure it doesn't. I think it came up in one of the things about that stuff like that. But, and then too, like one of the earlier questions you got where you're asking about kind of integration with kind of other Copilots, right? So obviously Power BI, we want to integrate with like Fabric Copilot, right? That's one of the ones that's probably easier than Office because we're fully integrated with Fabric already. So like stuff in notebooks, like we're looking at bringing like the DAX query Copilot into notebooks for like the semantic link and the Python there. You can do like is it magic commands? Magic commands is like the percentage DAX or something. I can never remember it. Anyway, so they're wanting to work with utilize the kind of DAX query skill here in that scenario as well, not just for desktop, right? So we have those kind of things going back and forth. So yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure how the out-of-box data Q&A works with embedded, to be honest. All right, any other questions?
Zoe, I have a quick follow-up to that last one.
Yeah.
And so it sounds like really that right now Copilot is really a benefactor to the developer and helping them with the DAX, helping them with creating the reports, but not necessarily something quite yet for an end user to interact with to help them analyze the data that is in the data model for this particular report.
Yeah, so that is definitely, I'm just not 100%. I know it's coming, right? If it's not out yet, we have that kind of, this was the kind of Copilot experiences for the business user, right? So they can see obviously the AI narrative that you put on a report, right? That's for them. They can't adjust the prompt, but they can see the output of the prompt you provided. Copilot, if you're editing a report on the web or they've gone ahead and creating their own report, right, they'll have Copilot there to help the report creation and the data Q&A, and then in an app, right? So you can have Copilot in the Power BI apps, right? And we are planning on doing some more like you know, why questions, cross-report summarizations, like if you have multiple reports in an app, having it kind of look across all of that data and kind of find the information you're looking for, and provide some analysis in that way, right? So all of those kind of business user ones are absolutely where in scope, right? So we definitely, the ones that I'm focusing on more probably developers, so you probably got that just because I'm talking about it, and that's the ones that I'm building. But it is for the whole range, right?
Thank you.
You're welcome. And then you can, and this is kind of just quick on the kind of documentation, you know, how do you enable it in, you know, there's a tenant setting, we have it auto on, and then kind of where that tenant setting is, cross geo concerns, and using it in the service. There's a workspace setting on how to, so you have to come into your licensing and make sure you're in a premium capacity or the fabric capacity, right? The trial won't do it for you. And then kind of enabling in desktop, you just click the button, right? We always have the button showing and desktop. And you can, I think in the settings, you can go, yeah. So in the options, you can go ahead and pick if you want to use a different capacity, like so you're using one work, you have to pick the workspace where the capacity resides. But if you know, kind of, if you want to use a different capacity, or, you know, it doesn't really matter what capacity, it doesn't cost kind of extra. It's just going to utilize that capacity. It's not going to be an additional cost on the workspace or your IT department. They're not going to be like, well, what were you doing over here? And you run up this huge bill. That's not going to happen, right? So it's just going to use those capacity units. And you can change kind of which workspace. If for whatever, like they change the licensing of the workspace you picked previously, when you go to use Copilot, it'll just prompt you to pick a different one. Let's see. So we have Power BI. I think they have like a little summary in here. Also kind of, you know, for the business users. So they have the generate summary of your report in the Copilot pane. So we do have a Copilot pane in the edit experience of the report. For report authors, the summaries, we went over summarize the underlying semantic model. That's it, you know, summarize this data, content suggestion, creating the report page, right? So you have all of this, and we're always updating this as we add in new stuff. There's the synonym one. That's what that looks like. I don't know why it wasn't showing today for me in the demo. It literally showed me like 5 minutes before the call, and then today now it's like, no, we're good. Anyway, that's what it looks like. It's just little sparkles. And then this is the measure descriptions, and then the DAX gray one. I don't know why I don't have pictures here, but they have their own pages here, and it'll kind of go through all of these things. And you'll notice I am slack and haven't updated my limitations yet, but we just released a couple of those limitations. So I have a minute. And then, so yeah, so that's how you kind of get to the documentation and kind of where you can find this information about. Most of the deep dive ones are here. You have the Copilot features here as well. And then this one actually has multiple. I don't know why I have multiple on mine, right? So you can have the Copilot DAX query features, and then I have a longer one over in the DAX kind of in the transfer model one here. And I think I also have one in the DAX page as well. So there's a lot of documentation available here for those guys. All right. Let me see. You're asking about the licensing. Are there any certifications that give you access to Copilot features in Power BI? Like if there's any like kind of learning material, or I'm not quite sure I get the question there. The licensing is confusing, but for Copilot, it's pretty straightforward. You need a capacity.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So go ahead.
we're an in-house. We're a pretty small company, and we thrive on having our people get certified to get us different licenses.
Oh,
I
I
see. Different
see.
products, and so put a lot of effort into that. And then I didn't know if there was a way, if there was a certain type of certification that granted you a level of licensing, but I didn't know it was capacity based. That makes more sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so they can yeah, so they have to be I'm not sure like in the tenant setting if there's And you can turn off. I'm not sure if you can grant like only a subset of your users access to do it or something like that. I'm not 100% sure. It'll be in here somewhere. Actually, it's probably in here. We go to here. Let me zoom in a little. I can't see a thing. Oh, yeah. Yes, you can do specific, right? So you can, if you wanted to just let a few of your users, view and say, okay, you guys have done my training on the Copilot, and now you can use Copilot on the capacity. You can do it this way here. So
Awesome. Thanks.
You're welcome. And let's see. Just trying to think of kind of other little gotchas. Yeah, so for one of the things that I think is really important to note from kind of a cost standpoint, I get asked a lot about kind of, well, this is a quite expensive capacity, but you can pause it, right? So you can spin it up, you can pause it, which is something you couldn't really do on the premium capacities that we have with Power BI, right? This one is more like kind of the A SKUs if you use the embedding SKUs, because they had that feature as well. They were in Azure. You could pause them. They were good. And even like the Azure analysis services, you could pause, you could spin them up, and you could scale them, right? And same with Fabric capacity. They have some really cool features around kind of auto scaling and scaling it back. And of course, it gives you access to all the other Fabric cool things, right? And you have the lake houses and One Lake and Direct Lake and all the lakey things, and then all the warehouses and all the SQL and all that kind of stuff. So, and what I like about, especially like Direct Lake and using the workspace, is it gives you all these new ETL tools, right? To load data with notebooks and data factories and pipelines, and as well as the data flows where you do your Power Query. So, but yeah, so yeah, I think we're about at time, but if anyone has any other questions, just let me know, reach out. If you have feedback on like especially DAX previews, there's a button in product, click it. It goes directly to me, right? I also show leadership, so please be nice. And all that kind of stuff. So yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thanks very much, Zoe. And I think that last kind of conversation point there about kind of some of the monitoring pieces there and tracking is a good segue into our next session. So if you want to learn more about Fabric monitoring, come back next month. Awesome. But yeah, thanks again, Zoe. Appreciate it. Thanks everyone for joining.
Very welcome. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.